On the day I thought my mother would be proud, she leaned in, smiling for the cameras, and whispered, "You don't deserve this." Her words sliced through the noise of the graduation crowd. My chest tightened, my vision blurred, but I forced myself to keep walking toward the stage. Years of late nights, double shifts, and skipped meals, dismissed in one breath. I didn't know the governor himself would be the one calling my name, or that the truth about my family would explode before the day was over. But in that moment, I had one choice: break or rise. I've always been the quiet one in the family. Not shy, exactly. Just someone who knew that speaking up rarely changed the outcome. At 21, I'd built a life in Boston that was entirely my own. Full-time student, part-time barista in the mornings, tutor in the evenings, weekends at a local library. My mother called it keeping busy. I called it survival. Rent, tuition, and groceries didn't pay for themselves, and in my family, the purse strings were reserved for my half-sister, Emily. Emily was 16, golden-haired, with the kind of easy charm that made people want to be near her. My mother adored her. Weekend shopping trips, spontaneous getaways, front-row concert tickets. When Emily got a B+ in math, there was a cake on the kitchen table. When I earned a scholarship that covered my final year of tuition, my mother barely looked up from her phone. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself I was used to it. But then, one evening while I was taking a break between assignments, my phone buzzed with a notification from TikTok. My mother had posted a video. Emily holding a trophy from her high school's talent show. The caption read, "So proud of my girl. My brightest star." Thousands of likes, dozens of comments. There was no mention of me, no post about the scholarship, the award I'd been working toward for 3 years, not even a casual congratulations in private. If it were you, would you say something to your mother? Or would you stay silent, pretending it doesn't matter? That night I sat alone in my dorm room, the hum of the radiator filling the silence. Dinner was a cup of instant noodles, steam curling into the cold air. I scrolled back through old family photos saved on my laptop. Birthdays, holidays, snapshots in front of the Christmas tree. In each one, Emily stood in the center, my mother's arm around her shoulders. I was always just off to the side, smiling, but not quite part of the picture. I wanted to believe I was imagining it, but the evidence was everywhere, and it was piling up. A week later, I went home for a family dinner. The kitchen smelled of roast chicken and garlic, the kind of meal my mother only made for special occasions. I slipped off my coat just in time to hear her voice, muffled but clear enough coming from the living room. "She's just not like Emily," my mother was saying. "Emily's the one who'll make us proud. She's the one with potential." I froze, my heart thudding in my ears. "Of course I love her," my mother went on. "But Hannah's different. You'll see. She'll be fine, but Emily's my real hope." I stepped back into the hallway before anyone could see me, my hands shaking. That was the moment something shifted. I needed to know why she saw me that way. Why the gap between us seemed so deliberate. I started with small questions to relatives, casual at first. "Do you remember what I was like as a kid? Was Mom always this close with Emily?" Most answers were vague, polite, but there was a hesitation in their voices, like they were skirting around something. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I borrowed my aunt's laptop under the pretense of needing to print something and stumbled across a private Facebook group for extended family. My mother was in it. Scrolling through the posts, I found a comment thread from 2 years ago that made my stomach twist. "She's not my blood," my mother had written, "but I raised her as my own." I read it 3 times, the words blurring. Not my blood. I needed proof. Back at my apartment, I tore through the folder where I kept all my important documents. Birth certificate. There it was. My name. My mother's name. And the space for father. Completely blank. I sat on my bed staring at it until my eyes burned. A few days later, while I was waiting for my shift at the cafe to start, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging. You won't like what you find. The text was followed by a second, moments later. If you value what you have, drop it now. I looked up, scanning the cafe, half expecting someone to be watching me. No one was. My stomach churned as I locked the screen. I didn't know who was on the other end, but I knew one thing. I couldn't walk away now. After that text message, something in me hardened. I didn't confront my mother. Not yet. Instead, I threw myself into the one thing I could control. My own record. My grades were already solid, but I pushed them higher. I took on an extra research project with one of my professors, volunteered at a community literacy program, and signed up for more hours at the cafe. If I couldn't be her favorite daughter, I could at least be undeniable. At night, when exhaustion kept me from focusing on assignments, I'd open Reddit and write. Not under my real name, of course. My account was anonymous. My posts filed under a new subreddit I'd created, r// Favoritism Survivors. At first, only a few people stumbled across it. I wrote about a friend whose mother openly favored a younger sibling, about the little ways favoritism eroded self-worth, about the birthday parties where one child got a pile of gifts and the other got socks. The replies trickled in, people from all over the world saying, "That's my story too." They shared their own versions of being the overlooked child, the one who had to fight for scraps of attention. For the first time, I didn't feel completely alone. Then one night, I posted a longer entry. I wrote about my friend winning a full-ride scholarship, only to have her mother ignore it entirely, while celebrating the sibling's minor school award on social media. I described the knot in her chest, the feeling of being invisible in her own family. By morning, the post had thousands of upvotes. A few hours later, it was cross-posted to other subreddits. Then I saw it. My mother's username, in the comments. She hadn't said anything yet, but my stomach dropped. She'd found it. 2 days later, I got the proof. My phone buzzed with a single text from her. "We need to talk." That evening, I walked back to my dorm and saw a new message waiting in my Reddit inbox. It was from a user named Silverlining84. "I don't know you, but your words hit me hard. You're worth more than their opinion. Don't stop believing that." I didn't even realize I was crying until my vision blurred and a tear hit my keyboard. But the reprieve didn't last. The next week, I came home for Sunday dinner. My mother was already waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes sharp. She didn't waste time. "Is that you writing online about our family?" I didn't answer. She didn't wait for one. "You're embarrassing us," she said. "If you have problems, you keep them in the family, and you can forget about the grocery money I send you every month. Clearly, you can handle yourself." It wasn't much, barely enough to cover more than a week's food, but it was the last thread of financial support she gave me. When it was gone, reality hit hard. I worked extra shifts, skipped meals, cut corners wherever I could. I told myself it was temporary. Then, one Friday afternoon, I got an email from my bank. A deposit had been made into my account, $5,000. The sender's name was listed as private transfer. I stared at it for a long time before I saw the second email in my inbox. The subject line read, It's time you know the truth. The message was short. I am your father. I've followed your life from a distance. Your mother kept us apart. But I can prove who I am. Check the attached document. It was a DNA test result, dated 2 months ago, matching my name to his. I read it twice, then a third time. My pulse was loud in my ears. The email ended with a single line. Meet me before your graduation, and you'll understand everything. I closed my laptop slowly, my mind spinning. I didn't know if it was real or if this was another twist in whatever game had started the day I began digging. But I knew one thing. This was bigger than anything I'd imagined when I first asked why my mother treated me differently, and I couldn't walk away now, the first time I saw him. I knew it was true. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, far from the neighborhoods my mother frequented. He was taller than I'd imagined, his dark hair streaked with silver, his suit pressed and immaculate. But it was the eyes, my eyes, that undid me. Hannah, he said, smiling like he'd been waiting years to say my name out loud. I'm Daniel. I didn't speak at first. My mind was still tangled in the 1,000 ways this could be a mistake, or a trap. But then he reached across the table, not to touch me, just to set down a worn photograph. In it, a younger version of him stood beside my mother, his arm around her. She was pregnant. I wanted to be there, he said, from the start. I was ready to fight for custody, but your mother, she had other plans. She told me I could stay away quietly, or she'd make sure your life was harder than either of us could bear. I felt my stomach twist. She made me take a settlement, he went on, enough to keep her comfortable, but the cost was you. I've followed your life the only way I could. When I saw your posts online, I knew you were ready to know the truth. It was a lot to absorb. I sat back, pressing my hands together. Why now? He gave a wry smile. Because I think you've built yourself strong enough to handle it, and because I've just come back to Boston for good. Then his expression softened. I'm a lawyer now, and an old friend of the governor. That last part made me blink. You mean... We went to high school together, he said. Haven't seen each other in years, but I know he'd be proud of what you've accomplished. You've done all this without the support you deserved. The cafe felt too small for all the new pieces clicking into place in my head. After coffee, we walked along the Charles River, the spring air cool against my cheeks. He asked about my classes, my jobs, the books I loved, the places I'd been. I told him about my scholarship, my plans after graduation, the sleepless nights that had gotten me there. He listened without interrupting, like every word mattered. 21 years of silence, and somehow it felt like no time had passed at all. There was no fixing the years we'd lost, but maybe we could start something new. Before we parted, he turned to me, his expression steady. I'll be at your graduation, Hannah. This time you won't have to stand there alone. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without dreams of confrontation. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my final semester with a kind of fire I hadn't felt before. My research project earned top marks. I spoke at a campus event about resilience and mentorship, not mentioning my own story, but speaking from the raw truth of it. Students came up afterward to say they saw themselves in my words. Somehow, my Reddit account found its way into wider circles, and soon, a local news blog wrote about the anonymous poster advocating for children facing favoritism at home. They called me the invisible daughter who refused to disappear. I didn't confirm it was me, but I didn't deny it either. The momentum carried me into new opportunities. I joined a nonprofit summer project, helping high school seniors from disadvantaged backgrounds apply for college. My inbox filled with messages from people who wanted to collaborate, share their stories, or simply say, "Thank you." And somewhere behind all of it, my father's quiet presence steadied me. We met for lunch every other week, careful to stay out of the public eye for now. He never pushed for more than I could give. What I didn't know was that while I was busy tying up my academic loose ends, the graduation committee was making plans. My department head had heard about my volunteer work and the viral story, and someone, maybe my father, maybe not, had put my name forward for special recognition. A month before the ceremony, the committee sent an official request to the governor's office. The man himself agreed to attend the commencement and read my name. But no one told me. They told my father, though, and he kept the secret, his eyes giving nothing away every time we met. Looking back, I think they wanted the moment to be as pure as it could be, unspoiled by expectation. All I knew was that I'd walk across the stage with my degree in hand. I had no idea that the stage would be the beginning of a much bigger reckoning. Graduation day had the strange, electric quality of a storm about to break. The campus was awash in robes and caps, the air thick with laughter and camera shutters. I lined up with the other graduates in the shadow of the auditorium, clutching my invitation card. My heart was already pounding, but I told myself it was just nerves. Then from behind me, I felt the presence before I heard the voice. My mother. She stepped close, her perfume familiar and sharp. Her lips barely moved as she leaned in, smiling for the families nearby. "You don't deserve this," she whispered. The words landed like a stone dropped into my chest. The chatter of the crowd faded, replaced by the slow thud of my heartbeat in my ears. My fingers clenched around the card, edges biting into my palm. I stared straight ahead, refusing to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. For a few seconds, all I could hear was the rush of my own breath. Then the stage lights flared in my peripheral vision, pulling me back to the moment. No. She wasn't going to take this from me. Not this. I lifted my chin, straightened my shoulders, and stepped forward when my row began to move. From the wings of the stage, I could see the podium, and standing behind it, impossibly, was the governor himself. My mind stuttered. What was he doing here? When it was my turn, he glanced down at the card, then up at me with a smile that felt knowing. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice rang out, "please join me in congratulating one of our state's brightest young scholars, Hannah Morgan." The applause erupted like a wave crashing over me. People rose to their feet. The sound filled every corner of the hall. For a heartbeat, I just stood there, caught in the surreal glow of it. Then I stepped forward to take my diploma. In the crowd, I caught sight of my father, Daniel, standing tall, clapping. The expression on his face was nothing but pride. And then I saw my mother 2 rows behind him, frozen, her eyes wide as the recognition set in. She knew exactly who he was. Her hands lowered, her applause faltering. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. When it was over, I found myself outside, the sunlight almost too bright. Graduates and families swirled around me, snapping pictures, hugging, laughing. I tried to keep moving, but the whispers were already starting. By the time I reached my phone, the first messages had come in. Someone had taken a video of the governor calling my name, the camera panning to my father in the audience. Comments were flooding in. Is that her dad? I heard her mom kept them apart. Good for her. Within an hour, the clip was on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. People were dissecting my smile, the governor's words, my mother's expression. Strangers were tagging me in posts, telling me I was an inspiration. At the same time, I knew my mother must be seeing the same things. her face caught in that moment of shock, replayed for the world to see. Later that evening, as I sat in my small apartment surrounded by flowers and cards from friends, my laptop pinged. A new email. The subject line made my stomach drop. Interview request. I opened it slowly. "Hannah," the message began. "I'm a reporter with the Boston Ledger. Congratulations on your graduation. We're working on a piece about family dynamics and perseverance, and your story has resonated with a lot of people online. Before we publish, I'd like to confirm one thing. Is it true your mother accepted money to keep you away from your biological father?" I stared at the question until the words blurred. My fingers hovered over the keys. But I didn't type, because if I answered that, the story wouldn't just be mine anymore. It would be everyone's. In the days after graduation, the noise didn't fade. It intensified. My phone became a constant stream of notifications, interview requests, messages from strangers, and tags in videos I hadn't even known were being filmed. One clip in particular had taken on a life of its own. The governor calling my name, the crowd rising to their feet, the brief shot of my mother's frozen expression, and my father's quiet pride. On TikTok, the video had millions of views. People stitched it with their own stories, their own moments of triumph in the shadow of someone's doubt. Some called me an icon of resilience. Others simply wrote, "For anyone who needed this reminder, you are enough." It was overwhelming, but it also forced me to pause. For years, I'd buried the way my mother's favoritism had shaped me, tightening my chest, making me second-guess every achievement. Now the world was reflecting that pain back at me. But they were also reframing it. They weren't pitying me. They were proud of me. I booked my first therapy session 2 weeks later. Walking into the therapist's office, I felt more nervous than I had standing on stage at graduation. It was a small space, warm and bright, with a chair that seemed too comfortable for the weight I carried. The first few sessions were awkward. Trying to put words to years of swallowed hurt felt like dragging rocks from the bottom of a lake. But slowly I began to see the patterns. How I'd internalized my mother's coldness as proof of my inadequacy. How every academic win had been a plea for her to see me. How much energy I'd spent proving my worth to someone who had already decided it was less than my sister's. My therapist helped me start separating my identity from her opinion. Forgiveness, she said, didn't mean excusing what happened. It meant loosening the grip it had on me. Outside those sessions, life moved forward. I kept working, kept volunteering. But there was a new lightness to it. When people recognized me from the video, I no longer wanted to shrink away. I let them tell me their stories. I listened. I thanked them. One evening, after a particularly long day, I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook and a pen. No cameras, no screens, just me. I began writing a letter. It wasn't to my mother. It was to everyone who had reached out, who had stood up in that invisible way that makes you feel less alone. I thanked them for believing me when I was still figuring out how to believe myself. I told them they had helped me more than they knew. When I was done, I took a picture of the letter and posted it anonymously in the subreddit I'd started. It felt right, that it should live there too. 2 days later, my phone lit up with a new message. It was from my mother. "We need to talk." I stared at it for a long time before replying. We met at a neutral place, a cafe halfway between her house and mine. She looked smaller than I remembered, like the weeks since graduation had worn her down. We sat across from each other, the table a line neither of us was sure how to cross. "I saw the video," she said finally. "I saw everything." I waited. "I didn't want it to be like this," she went on. "I was doing what I thought was best. For Emily. For you. keeping you apart from your father." She stopped, swallowed hard. Maybe it wasn't fair, but at the time I believed it was right. It wasn't an apology, not fully. It was half admission, half defense, and it left me suspended in a strange middle ground, grateful for the sliver of honesty, resentful for the justifications wrapped around it. When she reached into her bag and slid an envelope toward me, I felt my stomach tighten. Inside was a cashier's check for 25,000 slurs. "Consider it a start," she said. I pushed it back across the table. "I don't want your money," I said quietly. "If I take it, it will always be something you gave me. I need to know I built my life myself." Her eyes searched mine, but I didn't flinch. We parted with a polite hug, the kind you give acquaintances, not family. I knew then that I wasn't waiting for her to change anymore. I'd already stepped into the life I wanted, one where her approval wasn't the currency of my worth. A week later, an email arrived in my inbox. The subject line read, "Keynote Speaker Invitation." It was from the International Youth Leadership Conference, inviting me to speak about overcoming personal adversity. They'd seen the video, read some of my anonymous posts, and wanted me to share my journey with young leaders from around the world. I sat back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. I thought of the girl eating instant noodles in a dorm room, scrolling through family photos, wondering if she'd ever matter. I thought of the woman walking across the stage to the sound of her own name filling a hall. I typed my reply. Yes, I'd be honored. Summer settled over Boston with the kind of heavy warmth that made everything feel slower, quieter. The frenzy after graduation had faded into something more manageable. Emails I could answer in the morning, messages I could read before bed, without my heart racing. Life began to take on a new rhythm. I still heard from my mother, though less often. A text now and then about a family gathering I didn't attend. A forwarded photo of Emily at some school event. We were polite, careful. I didn't expect an apology anymore, and I no longer felt the sharp edge of that disappointment. Instead, there was a kind of truce, thin, but enough to hold. With my father, things were different. We met regularly, sometimes over lunch, sometimes for a walk along the river. He asked about my work, my conference speech preparations, the scholarship ideas I'd been sketching out. It felt like building a bridge that had been missing for 21 years, each meeting another plank laid down. One evening, after a long day of working on my keynote address, I sat at my desk and picked up the framed photo from graduation. The governor's hand on my shoulder, the crowd blurred in the background, my own smile caught mid-breath. I traced the edge of the frame with my thumb and felt a small, private smile tug at my mouth. It wasn't perfect. My family wasn't healed. But I was standing in a place I'd fought for, a place where I could breathe without waiting for someone else's approval. The conference came and went in a whirlwind of speeches, handshakes, and late-night conversations with people from all over the world. I spoke about resilience, about the power of building your own support system when the one you're born into fails you. When I stepped down from the stage, my inbox was already filling with new messages. That was when the idea solidified into something real. 2 months later, I launched the Morgan Foundation, a scholarship fund for students who had grown up facing parental favoritism, neglect, or estrangement. It was small at first, just enough to support 3 students a year. But it was mine. Funded by speaking engagements, donations from strangers, and a contribution from my father, it felt like a way to turn my story into something that might rewrite someone else's. Running the foundation gave my life a focus beyond my own healing. I heard stories that echoed mine so closely, they made my chest ache. Others were different. but the thread of longing for fairness ran through them all. Each scholarship letter sent out felt like sending hope into a world that desperately needed it. One crisp October morning, I sat in my apartment going through the foundation's email inbox. Most were applications or donation confirmations. Then I saw it. An unfamiliar address. No subject line. I clicked it open. "Hannah," it began. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately. About us. I know I was part of the problem, even if I didn't mean to be. I went along with things I should have questioned. I didn't stand up for you when I could have. I'm sorry. Can you forgive me? Emily." I sat back, staring at the screen. Emily. My sister. The one who had been at the center of my mother's world. We had never been close. There was too much unspoken between us. But here it was. An opening. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't type a response. Not yet. Forgiveness was a door I might walk through someday, but I wanted to be sure I was ready before I touched the handle. I closed the email and looked out the window at the city below. Boston moved on, unaware of the quiet shifts in my life, the small reconciliations, the bigger boundaries. If there was one thing the last year had taught me, it was this. Family can give you a starting line, but it's up to you to choose the course. You can carry the weight of their choices forever, or you can set it down and run your own race. I turned back to my desk, opened a blank document, and began outlining my next speech. The title came easily. You are the author of your own ending. And as I typed, I realized it wasn't just a speech. It was the truth I'd been living all along.